Hey everyone, welcome back. Here we are doing the thing again. I wanted to come this week to talk about some transits that are coming up in the next couple of weeks, starting today. And you don't have to be listening to this episode on time to learn about the archetypes, to learn about the gates and the transits that I'm going to talk about, because they are gates in the Human Design Chart Center and they have valuable lessons. And this may be brief. Gosh, but I have to laugh at myself because sometimes I share videos and in the beginning I'll say this is going to be brief and then I talk for 36 minutes, or I'm 7 minutes into a video and then I say, oh, I'm going to wrap up here to sum up, and then I talk for another 10 minutes. So take all of that with a grain of salt. It seems like I have little awareness about where I'm going if I'm in front of the screen or in front of the microphone. So we're just gonna see where this goes. Just want to share some of these archetypes with you because these have directly to do. So before I begin, we're talking about gate 22 and gate 36. And these have to do with our emotional experiences, specifically in our relationships. And there is a direct link between these gates and our romantic relationships, but it's not exclusive to our romantic or intimate relationships. So these are gates in the Human Design Chart that are connected to the solar plexus, the emotional center, and have to do with our emotional and relational experiences as human beings. And they are what bring to us emotional turbulence and things like grace and compassion. And these gates in the chart are going to be activated for the next couple of weeks. And I remember a couple of years ago when gate 36 specifically was activated, just how deeply I felt it and just how sad it was. And I remember that was roughly the time when in my part of the world, the lockdowns were beginning, and the pandemic was really hitting hard globally, and it was just starting to make its way to where I am, to the point where businesses were shutting down, and there was a lot of fear and sadness. And I remember catching a video of folks in Italy who had been on lockdowns for a while and were locked in their apartments, and they're all out on their balconies and they're singing together and just kind of united in that way. And I just was sobbing. I was so moved by that. But at other parts of the week, it felt more like sadness, whereas what I was experiencing in crying watching that video of those people in lockdown in Italy was more so a sense of shared humanity and compassion. And so that's a little hint as to what 36 is. But that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I remember that the depth of and the range of what this felt like for me a couple of years ago when the lockdowns were arriving to my part of the country here in the Midwest. So also I wanted to bring it up because it's helpful to know about your chart and the transits. And if you are someone like me who has one of the opposite gates to either 22 or 36, then you are a magnet for the conditioning of 22 and 36, which are very emotionally painful. So for me, for example, in my chart, I do have gate 35. Gate 35 and gate 36 form a channel. And I have gate 35, which means I'm a magnet for the conditioning of 36, which is pretty negative overall. The conditioning is globally. And then if you have gate 12, then you're also a magnet for the conditioning of gate 22, which we'll talk about. And I have some notes here in front of me just to make sure that I don't wander too much, because I want to make sure I hit some certain points. But if you have gate 36 or 22, then you are less likely to feel the transits in the next couple of weeks. But that just means, if you have these gates that I'm about to talk about, these archetypes in your chart, that means you're learning them through yourself a little bit more. You're not learning them through the conditioning field in the same way that someone like me is, for example. But I have both gate 36 and 22 open, but I'm more conditioned to the gate 36 because I have gate 35, if that clears things up, because I don't have gate 12, so I'm less of a magnet for the conditioning of 22, even though I'm open to the conditioning of it. So hopefully that makes sense. You can look at your chart and think about things in that sort of way. So let's get into these archetypes. And first I like to start with the shadow experiences, the low expression, the negative expression, the uncomfortable expression of these archetypes, so that we know where we're beginning, and so that we know what we're dealing with and what needs healed. And most of us are spending our time between the shadows and the gifts, the low and the higher expressions. We're usually moving back and forth a little bit. So we're going to start there. These lower expressions are stepping stones. We have to really feel that and understand that to move into the higher expressions of all the archetypes. But that is becoming less true as we evolve as human beings, and there are people being born now and will continue to be born who are already in these gift frequencies, essentially. So let's start with the shadows. In the shadow frequency, this is a place where, of 22 specifically, where we cannot handle our emotions or our sexuality. And like I said earlier, this does have to do with our intimate relationships, and so it also has to do with our sexuality. Gate 22 and Gate 36 have themes of sexuality, as do some other gates in the human design chart, because this is a part of what it means to be a human. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to explore that. So in the shadow here, this is a place where we don't really know how to handle our feelings or our sexuality, and so it usually leads to suppression. Because there's so much that we can't understand and that we don't know how to handle, it usually just kind of gets squashed and suppressed, because we don't know how to look at it. We don't know how to hold it. We don't know how to feel it. And so we suppress it, which then usually turns into resentment, hatred, or it reacts and comes out in inappropriate behaviors. And it's very reactive, this gate, and causes a lot of our problems in our relationships. But when this evolves into the higher expression, there's a lot more consideration for other people's feelings, because that's not what's happening in the lower expression of this gate. In the shadow, there's a lot of reactivity, hatred, and confusion about what you might be feeling. And then that does become transmuted, it gets released, it gets healed, and then Gate 22 moves into this very graceful place where it understands that that other people's feelings matter. And then it has a lot of social power and social charm if it's in the right mood, and can have a great impact on people, can really affect a room and sway people with with their emotion, and it does become very very charming and very powerful. Um, so that is a benefit of the higher expression here, is that it always considers the feelings of other people. And that's not happening in the shadow frequency. And it helps other people with their emotional wounds. Because in the shadow, Gate 22 cannot handle their own emotional wounds, doesn't understand what happened, doesn't understand how to love on them, doesn't understand how to let them go. And so it becomes very hateful, or it acts out. And then it transforms into kindness. Kindness is really at the core of the gift of Gate 22. It's a social grace that really influences other people with kindness, with understanding of other people's feelings, and wants to influence other people for good. So that's something to look out for, like I said, in the next week or two, as Gate 22 is activated. Are there emotions you're experiencing that you cannot handle, and are they being suppressed, or are they reacting? And is it hurting people? And are there things you need to be honest with yourself about, identify and let go and heal? Because these are emotional aspects of us, and there are emotional waves to this sort of thing. There can be an emotional wave that comes with this transit. And emotional waves are meant to pass through us. They are meant to be. They're meant to be felt. Not judged, not suppressed, not identified with. It really is just meant to come and go, just kind of like a cloud in the sky, just passing through. And then are there feelings of other people that you need to consider? Or whose feelings are you not considering? And how could you possibly help other people with their emotional wounds? Now, let's talk about Gate 36. So, Gate 36, in its shadow, brings emotional turbulence. And this is when we are so afraid of crisis that we are in a constant state of fear. 36 is the feeling that we are just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so we are in a state where we cannot relax, and we experience a lot of emotional turbulence in 36. Excuse me. And so in this shadow, in this lower expression place, there are a couple of ways that this can play out. And sometimes this is somebody who is very fearful and collapses beneath the crisis, and is paralyzed and or experiences a lot of emotional turbulence due to fear. It can also become kind of reactive in that it creates crises. This can be a part of us that is crisis prone and addicted to crisis. And so in intimate relationships, this is sometimes the part of us that creates problems. And this can be a part of our experience with people who have affairs and hide them because of guilt. And so this is where we are either trying to run from crisis and don't know how to handle the possibility, emotionally, the possibility of that happening, or we are just creating it. We are drawing it towards us. And when we finally embrace this part of us, when we embrace these deep emotional wounds and these deep pain points, the emptiness, the fear, the hunger, and we really go into it, we really look at it, what happens with gate 36 is that we arrive at a place of shared humanity, shared understanding, and it becomes complete acceptance of the emotions and the fears of what it means to be a human being. And so that's where the compassion comes in gate 36. Because in gate 36, we experience emotional turbulence, we come to learn and grow from and understand emotional turbulence so that we can look at our neighbor, we can look at someone on the other side of the planet and say, I understand you. I feel you. You are just like me. You hurt in the same ways that I do. And in that place, then we understand that emotion and love and shared pain are the things that connect us to every other human being. Suffering is what connects us, and love is what connects us. So with both of these gates, there is the opportunity to look at your deep emotional wounds, to really go through them, because that's the only way that suffering really gets minimized or healed. It's not by running from it. So the opportunity to look at those things and to let them go and to develop a sense of understanding emotionally, to develop emotional mastery in ourselves and in our relationships, to see how we might just emotionally be creating problems, how we might be addicted to crisis, how we might be too afraid of crisis, which is unavoidable at times, and how we can not only manage our emotions and heal our emotions for ourselves, but how we can move to this place of looking at another human being and understanding their pain and helping them solve their own emotional problems and their own emotional wounds with your compassion, with your heart, and with your emotion. Emotion is such a powerful frequency, and it is a frequency. It's changing, it's dynamic. It's not truth. Emotion is not truth. So that's another thing to keep in mind these next couple of weeks. You might feel a lot of emotion. I imagine that I will. I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to just observe it, and I hope you will too, because this really can bring up depths of emotion and fear of crisis. And with things going on the way they're going in the world right now, this can bring up a lot of fear. But ground yourself in compassion, in looking at another human being and understanding that they share your joys and your sorrows, and give love to yourself and to the people around you, and be kind with yourself, whatever you need. But I hope thinking about these sorts of things will be helpful to you. It's nice to share these archetypes with you. Again, go take a look at your chart in case you are in case you're living these out in any certain sort of way. And before I go, I just want to make a couple of announcements. Number one, I'm pregnant. Yay! I'm pretty excited about that, just in case you haven't caught the news. Yeah, my partner and I are expecting a baby, and we are feeling lots of love and joy around that, and enjoying so far just sharing that with you all and keeping you up to date. And then the second bit of news before we go is that I currently have 5 spots available for anyone who's interested in coaching with me and really breaking through stuckness. I have a 5-session offer for anyone who feels like they're living a life that looks good, but things feel really heavy and really painful. If you are putting on a happy face and really struggling to hold yourself up, you're trying to take care of yourself, you're trying to feel better, but it's just not working. I'm offering this program to help you find self-awareness and self-love, because that is the solution to burnout and chronic dissatisfaction. And so if you're interested, I invite you to find me on Instagram, send me a message, send me an email at Cameron@CameronCoots.com, and we could talk about that and then talk about next steps if you're interested. So those are my announcements here at the end. Thanks so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, thanks for listening. If you're on the podcast, great to talk with you all. If you enjoyed this, I hope you'll share it with a friend so that other people can find me and we can all be a great big happy family together online. And I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.